canine German Shepherd collapsed in front of a mansion. What the child did next shocked everyone. A battered German Shepherd collapsed outside a gated mansion, alone, trembling, and nearly lifeless. No one dared to approach him. He looked dangerous, wild like a ghost from a battlefield. But then, a child stepped forward. What that little girl did next stunned the entire neighborhood and set in motion a story of healing, love, and unbreakable loyalty. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more inspiring stories like this to you. The neighborhood was still that morning. The kind of stillness that only exists in wealthy suburbs where the trees are perfectly trimmed and the silence is part of the luxury. Children weren't outside yet. Sprinklers hissed rhythmically across manicured lawns. Inside the largest mansion on Ridgewood Lane, a little girl named Lily was sitting by the window, her small chin resting on the palm of her hand, bored out of her mind. She was only 7, but carried the quiet loneliness of someone used to being ignored. Her parents were rarely home, always traveling for work, always too busy. The mansion had everything: a pool, a playground, even a private cinema. But none of it mattered when you had no one to share it with. That morning, something caught her eye outside the tall iron gates. At first, it looked like a shadow, a dark mass slowly dragging itself up the street. Lily squinted. Then she stood. Whatever it was limping. She rushed down the staircase, her bare feet pattering against the marble floor. The butler, Mr. Hargrove, called after her, but she didn't respond. She flung the front door open and ran to the gate. There, just beyond the black bars, stood a German Shepherd. His fur was patchy, caked with dirt and dried blood. One of his legs dragged behind him. His chest rose and fell unevenly. He looked up at Lily with eyes that weren't just tired, they were haunted. Then, right there in front of her, he collapsed. "Mom! Mr. Hargrove, somebody!" Lily screamed. The staff came running, horrified. Hargrove immediately pulled Lily back. "Miss Lily, don't get too close. That's a stray. He could be dangerous." But she didn't move. She stared at the dog's body, motionless on the pavement. He wasn't just some stray. Something about the way he had carried himself before he fell. Something in his eyes. It felt important. "He's hurt," she said quietly. "I'll call animal control," Hargrove said, already dialing. "No," Lily shouted. "Please, he needs help, not a cage." Behind them, the housekeeper murmured, "Looks like a military dog. He's got a scar by the ear. That kind of mark is from service." "A canine?" Hargrove asked, lowering the phone slightly. Lily knelt by the gate, her small fingers curling around the bars. "Please don't let them take him away." The dog groaned. "Barely." Hargrove sighed. He had served in the Navy years ago and recognized that look, the exhaustion, the fight to stay alive. Something had brought this dog to their gate. Not luck, not accident, purpose. "Fine," he muttered. "Bring a towel and call Dr. Sanders, the vet, not animal control." Lily smiled for the first time in weeks. They opened the gate slowly. The dog didn't move. Hargrove approached with extreme caution, keeping his hands visible. He knelt beside the shepherd, gently touching his ribs. The dog flinched, but didn't growl, just trembled. "He's not going to make it without help," the vet said when she arrived. She examined him right there on the driveway. Gunshot near the hind leg. Fresh, probably escaped something bad. Lily knelt beside her, eyes wide. "Will he die?" Dr. Sanders hesitated. "Not if we move fast." The dog was lifted onto a stretcher and taken into the mansion. Something no one on the block had ever seen. A bleeding German Shepherd being carried into one of the fanciest homes in town, escorted by a little girl holding his paw the entire way. No one understood what was happening, not even Lily. But deep down, she already knew. This wasn't just a dog. This was the beginning of everything. The smell of antiseptic lingered in the guest bedroom, now hastily transformed into a makeshift recovery space. White sheets covered the floor beneath the large dog bed brought in at the last minute. A portable heater buzzed quietly in the corner, warming the room. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, watching every breath that rose and fell from the injured German Shepherd's chest. His bandaged leg was stretched out awkwardly, and an IV drip hung beside the bed, slowly pumping life back into him. The vet had left just an hour earlier, her voice still echoing in Mr. Hargrove's head. He'll need rest, clean space, pain meds, and patience. He's been through something violent. You can see it in his body and his eyes. Lily hadn't left his side since he arrived. She had named him Shadow. The moment she said it, the dog blinked, as if acknowledging the name. That one small reaction gave Lily all the permission she needed to care deeply. Mr. Hargrove stood by the doorway, arms crossed. You know your parents will be furious when they find out. Lily didn't look at him. They won't notice. He didn't argue. Sadly, she was probably right. Don't get too close, he added. He may still bite. He won't, Lily said softly. He came here for a reason. The house staff whispered about it for hours. Some said it was a miracle. Others, a warning. Why had a wounded canine dog shown up at this house? This street? With all the places he could have collapsed, he chose the gates of one of the richest homes in the city, owned by people who had no pets, no military ties, and no reason for a dog to appear. But Lily believed in things that grown-ups forgot. She believed animals could feel more than humans gave them credit for. That maybe, just maybe, Shadow was searching for someone. And maybe he had found her. That night, as the mansion grew dark and silent, Lily curled up in a blanket on the floor beside the dog bed. She held a flashlight and a book in her hand, but never opened it. Her eyes stayed on Shadow, who occasionally twitched in his sleep, as if running from something terrible in a dream. In the middle of the night, a low, sharp whimper escaped from his throat. Lily sat up immediately. Shadow's eyes opened. For a second, they looked wild, panicked. Lily didn't speak. She didn't reach out. She just waited. His breathing was shallow. His gaze darted across the room until it landed on her. Then, stillness. Slowly, cautiously, he rested his head back on the blanket. Lily reached out, only inches between them now. She placed her small hand on the floor, palm up, inviting, not demanding. Shadow's nose twitched. Then, to everyone's disbelief, though no one else was there to see it, he placed his paw over her fingers, only for a moment. But it was enough. The next morning, Hargrove walked in and found the two of them asleep like that, her curled beside the bed, their hands touching, the sunlight streaming in through the curtains like a silent blessing. Later that day, while cleaning Shadow's wounds, Dr. Sanders noticed the tattoo on his inner ear. USMC, she said, eyebrows raised. He's military. No doubt. Looks like he was abandoned after deployment, or lost. Maybe even left behind. Left behind? Lily asked. The vet nodded grimly. It happens. Dogs that serve in combat zones don't always get brought home. Some are forgotten, others are too injured. But they remember everything. The smells, the gunshots, the fear. Lily looked at Shadow, now resting peacefully. He didn't forget. That's why he came here. That evening, as the house buzzed with whispers and unanswered questions, Lily sat beside him again. Don't worry, she whispered. You're not going to be left behind again, I promise. Shadow's ear twitched. Then his eyes opened, and for the first time since he arrived, He wagged his tail. Just once. But Lily saw it, and she smiled. 3 days had passed since Shadow collapsed in front of the mansion, and the entire household had quietly rearranged itself around his presence. The staff who once tiptoed around Lily now found themselves checking in on the dog, peeking through the doorway with cautious glances. Everyone pretended it was just out of concern, but they all knew something else was happening. The presence of that dog, silent, broken, but undeniably noble, had shifted the energy of the house. Lily, however, was the most changed. She woke up early every morning before the sun rose, just to sit by his side. She whispered stories to him, stories about school, about the books she loved, and the dreams she had. Sometimes, Shadow would open his eyes and stare at her while she spoke. Sometimes, he would fall asleep to her voice. But today, something was different. Lily had gone to get a fresh towel, and when she returned, she froze at the doorway. Shadow wasn't lying down. He was trying to stand. His body trembled, legs wobbled, but he was pushing up with everything he had, the bandaged leg shaking under the strain. His breathing was labored, and his claws scraped against the polished floor. But still, he rose, slowly, painfully. "Shadow!" Lily cried, rushing to his side. He stumbled, nearly collapsing again. She knelt in front of him, arms open but not touching, terrified to interfere with whatever this was, a test of will, a battle he had to face on his own. He stood for all of 10 seconds before lowering himself back down. But it was a victory. Lily didn't cheer, she didn't clap. She simply knelt down and whispered, "You're still fighting." Later that day, Dr. Sanders returned for her check-in. She examined the healing wound and smiled. "He's stubborn," she said, impressed. "He's got spirit. That's a good sign. But his body's still weak." "Will he walk again?" Lily asked, eyes wide. Dr. Sanders hesitated. "If he has something to fight for, maybe." That evening, Lily dragged a chair into the guest room and sat beside Shadow as he rested again. "My parents are coming back tomorrow," she said, her voice smaller than usual. "They're not going to want you here." Shadow looked at her. "I don't know what will happen, but I'll protect you. I swear." She reached out, brushing his fur gently. He didn't flinch this time. In fact, he leaned into her touch. Then, for the first time, he made a sound, a low, breathy whine, almost like a thank you. The next morning was tense. The staff moved with the anxious precision of people preparing for something unpleasant. Hargrove had the car washed twice. The floors were polished. Fresh flowers were placed in every hallway. Lily sat with Shadow, fingers nervously laced together. Then, the black SUV pulled into the driveway. Her parents were home. Margot and Daniel Bennett were polished, powerful, and far too busy. They stepped out of the car already talking on phones, giving orders to staff, barely glancing at their daughter. Until they walked into the guest room. Daniel stopped first. "What the hell is that?" Margot stared, shocked. "Why is there a dog in our house?" Lily stood up, heart pounding. "He's mine." Margot blinked. "Yours?" "He came to the gate. He was dying. I saved him." "You what?" Daniel snapped. "This is a $9 million home. We are not keeping a wounded stray in here. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is?" "He's not dangerous," Lily cried. "He's a military dog. He was left behind. He's not a stray, he's a hero." Shadow shifted. Slowly he pushed himself up again, this time managing to sit upright. His ears were alert, his eyes calm, focused. And then, in the silence, he did something no one expected. He raised his paw, not to threaten, but to salute. It was slow, unsteady, but unmistakable. Daniel Bennett, former Army lieutenant, went pale. He knew that gesture. Margot's phone slipped from her hand. Lily stepped forward, her voice trembling. "He's not going anywhere." And for once, they listened. Shadow's paw, raised in that shaky but unmistakable salute, lingered in the air for only a few seconds. But it was enough. Enough to silence the room. Enough to freeze Daniel Bennett in place. Enough to change everything. Daniel slowly stepped forward, his eyes locked on the dog. "That's not something you teach a stray," he murmured. "He's a real soldier," Lily said, standing protectively in front of Shadow. "The vet said he has a tattoo in his ear, USMC. Daniel crouched low, his expensive suit crinkling at the knees. He wasn't the kind of man who touched animals. He barely even patted Lily on the head. But something about Shadow had pierced through the wall he wore like armor. He leaned close, slowly reaching toward Shadow's ear. The dog didn't flinch. There it was, faded but clear. USMC 47A B274. Daniel's breath caught. This dog was deployed. A Marine K9. Margot crossed her arms, uneasy. But how did he end up here? Why our house? "I don't know," Daniel said, still staring at the dog. "But if what Lily says is true, he's been through hell." "I told you," Lily whispered, her voice rising with emotion. "He came here for a reason." Margot exhaled sharply, stepping back into her role as the woman who ran the mansion. "We can't keep a dog like this here. He's sick, injured. What if he snaps and bites someone?" Shadow, still watching, let out a low sound, half sigh, half growl. He wasn't threatening. It was something else. Something tired. Wounded. Daniel looked at his daughter. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Because you don't see me. You don't hear me. I could have disappeared and you wouldn't notice, but he did." That hit harder than expected. Even Margot flinched. Daniel stood slowly. "The dog stays." Margot opened her mouth to object, but he raised a hand. "He's a veteran. He's earned his place." Lily didn't smile. She just sat beside Shadow, laid a hand on his fur and whispered, "I told you, I'll protect you." From that day on, Shadow wasn't just a guest. He was family. But as the days passed, Daniel's curiosity grew. He called in a contact from his military days, a retired handler named Rick Alvarez, now working at a veteran K9 database unit. Rick came by 3 days later, carrying a laptop and a grim expression. "Found him," Rick said after running the tattoo through the system. "Name's Baron, served 2 tours in Afghanistan. K9 Explosive Detection Unit, assigned to Corporal Andrew Lutz." "Where's the corporal now?" Daniel asked. Rick sighed. "KIA, last mission, ambush." Baron survived, but was listed as non-recovered, assumed lost. But someone, some contractor, must have dumped him here instead of going through protocol. Daniel clenched his jaw. "So he just ended up on the streets?" "Yeah. Happens more than we like to admit. These dogs save lives, then get left behind." Lily had been listening from the hallway. She stepped into the room. "His name's not Baron anymore, it's Shadow." Rick turned to her, surprised. "That's a good name. He probably likes that better." Shadow was lying nearby, his head lifted, ears perked. He didn't mow, but his eyes were alert, watching, processing, understanding. Lily looked at Rick. "Did he see the corporal die?" Rick nodded. "He probably did, and he probably thinks it's his fault." Lily turned back to Shadow. Her heart broke in silence. That night, she lay next to him again, her small hand pressed gently to his chest. "You didn't fail," she whispered. "You survived. You made it back." Shadow shifted, curling just slightly toward her. That same night, Daniel stood at the doorway, arms crossed, eyes misty. For the first time in a long while, he saw his daughter not as a little girl to be managed or protected, but as a brave, compassionate soul who had done what grown men had not. She saw a broken warrior and chose to love him anyway. And in doing so, she had saved them both. The mansion had become strangely quieter in the days following Shadow's identification. He wasn't just a wounded stray anymore. He was a recognized war hero, a soldier who had seen the worst of humanity and somehow made it home. Or at least, to something close to it. Lily treated him like royalty. Every morning before school, she sat beside him and read aloud while brushing his fur. Shadow had grown more alert, more present. The limp was still there, but he stood longer each day, walked a few extra steps, even attempted to climb the first stair once before giving up with a grunt. But something was different today. He paced, back and forth, restlessly. His ears constantly perked toward the front door, then to the windows. When Lily returned from school that afternoon, she noticed it immediately. "What's wrong, boy?" she asked, kneeling beside him. Shadow didn't respond. His eyes darted. His tail was still. That evening, a thunderstorm rolled in. Not heavy, but loud. Sharp cracks echoed across the sky. Lily was upstairs when the first thunderclap hit. Downstairs, Shadow froze. Something in the sound broke him. His breathing changed. His posture stiffened. His eyes went wide, filled with panic. Then, without warning, he bolted. The staff screamed as the giant shepherd pushed past them, claws scrambling on the tile floor. He slammed against the front door until someone flung it open, and then he was gone, out into the night, into the rain. Running like he was back on the battlefield. By the time Lily ran downstairs, barefoot, soaked from sprinting through the hall to the entryway, it was too late. "He's gone," Hargrove said, breathless. "He just snapped." "No," Lily whispered. "He remembered." Daniel grabbed his car keys. "We'll find him." But the roads were slick and the sky unforgiving. Visibility was terrible, and Shadow had a head start. They searched for hours. No sign, no sound, only thunder and shadows. That night, Lily refused to sleep. She sat by the window in her bedroom, flashlight in hand, eyes burning, whispering over and over again, "Come back, please come back." At 3:47 a.m., soaked and shivering, Daniel returned home and admitted what he didn't want to say. "We lost him." Lily didn't cry. She closed the curtains and laid on the floor beside his empty bed. The next morning, news began to spread. Someone had seen a large German shepherd near an abandoned construction site on the edge of the city. Another claimed they saw him circling a gas station, confused and limping. No one dared approach. Then came a call from a retired Marine named Tom Lewis, who had read about Barron online. He had a theory. "You said he ran during the thunder?" Tom asked over the phone. It wasn't random. He was triggered PTSD. That sound took him back. And if he followed old patterns, he's trying to return to the last place he saw his handler. Daniel paled. "But that would be..." Tom nodded. "The military cemetery outside Fort Ashford." It was over 20 miles away. No one believed a wounded dog could make it that far. But Lily did. 2 hours later, they arrived at the cemetery. Rows of white headstones, perfectly lined, drenched from the storm. They searched for almost an hour. And then Lily saw him. Shadow was lying beside a grave, mud-covered, soaked, motionless. His ribs heaved with every breath. In front of him was a headstone. Corporal Andrew Lutz, 1989 to 2023, K9 handler. They served together. Lily didn't speak. She just walked slowly toward him. Shadow looked up, and for the first time, whimpered like a child. Lily knelt in the mud, wrapped her arms around his neck, and held him tight. "You found him," she whispered through tears. "But now let me take you home." Shadow didn't resist. He was ready. But his heart was still broken. And Lily knew some wounds went deeper than war. They brought Shadow home wrapped in warm blankets, his body soaked to the bone and trembling with exhaustion. The mud had caked into his fur so deeply, it took nearly an hour for the housekeeper and Dr. Sanders to clean it out. His paws were cracked, bleeding from the distance he'd traveled. The gash on his hind leg had reopened, and his eyes, those solemn, wounded eyes, looked emptier than before. He hadn't run away because he didn't love Lily. He had run because pain doesn't ask permission. It buries itself in the deepest parts of the soul and waits, quiet and still, until something familiar triggers its storm. The thunder that night hadn't just sounded like war. To Shadow, it was war. And war was where he'd lost everything. Lily stayed by his side again, this time not talking, not reading, just being there. She didn't try to force comfort. She simply laid her hand over his and waited. Sometimes, presence speaks louder than words ever could. Daniel watched from the doorway, arms crossed. He had been a soldier once too. He recognized that kind of grief. He'd seen it in the eyes of returning veterans, and one is in his own mirror. "He needs more than medicine," Daniel said to Dr. Sanders in the hallway. "He needs peace," the vet nodded. "And he'll only find it if he knows he's finally safe." In the days that followed, they changed everything. Daniel called in a specialist, an ex-K9 trainer named Maya Torres, who now worked exclusively with retired military dogs. She arrived with calm energy, a duffel bag full of tools, and eyes that saw past the behavior into the trauma behind it. She didn't speak to Shadow at first. She simply let him exist. Let him observe. She taught the staff how to move slower, speak softer. Even the household routines changed. No more slamming doors, no loud TVs, no shouting across hallways. The entire mansion adapted to him, and slowly, Shadow began to adapt too. Lily noticed it first. He started following her around again, not closely, but a few steps behind. He responded when she called his name. He stopped shaking every time the weather shifted. One afternoon, Maya brought over an old training sleeve and crouched beside him. "This is a test," she said gently, looking at Daniel, "to see if the soldier in him still responds to command or fear." Shadow stared at the sleeve for a long time. Then, without growling, he turned away and laid down beside Lily's feet. Maya smiled. "Good boy. That means he's not stuck in the past anymore. He's choosing the present." That night, as the house settled into sleep, Daniel sat in the kitchen with a glass of whiskey. Lily joined him quietly, her oversized pajama sleeves dragging on the counter. "He's different," she said. "So are you," Daniel replied. Lily looked at him, surprised. Her father rarely complimented her, barely noticed her, really. But tonight, there was something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Pride. "You saved him, Lily." She blinked, then smiled. "He saved me first." Outside the kitchen door, Shadow sat quietly, watching them. He didn't need to come inside. He just needed to be near her, and that was enough. The next morning, as the sun rose behind the trees, Lily stepped out into the backyard. The grass was still wet with dew, and the air was crisp. She looked around, smiling at the sound of birdsong, when she heard the soft padding of paws behind her. Shadow joined her on the lawn, walking without a limp. She gasped, kneeling quickly. "Shadow!" He stood still for a moment, ears perked, eyes steady. Then, in one sudden, smooth motion, he ran. Not in fear, not to escape, but to play. He circled the lawn, tail wagging, light in his movements. And then, impossibly, he barked. Joy! Lily ran after him, laughing, tears in her eyes. From the window, Daniel watched his daughter chasing a once broken dog across the grass, and something inside him shifted. For the first time in years, this house felt like a home. And it was all because of a child who refused to give up, and a dog who found the courage to live again. Weeks passed. Shadow's body healed faster than anyone expected, but it was his spirit that surprised them most. He no longer flinched at thunder. He no longer stared out windows like a soldier waiting for orders. Instead, he slept soundly at Lily's bedside, played in the yard each morning, and wagged his tail when she came home from school. He had chosen her, and she had chosen him. On the anniversary of Corporal Lutz's death, Daniel took Lily and Shadow to the cemetery. No words were spoken, just silence, respect, love. Shadow lay beside the grave for a moment, then stood and walked away, this time without looking back. That night, Daniel sat at dinner with his wife and daughter. Margot finally broke the quiet. We never asked, what's going to happen to Shadow long term? Lily answered without hesitation, her voice steady and clear. He's already home. They all looked at Shadow, sleeping peacefully at her feet. No one argued, because they knew she was right. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Shadow's journey reminds us all. Sometimes the ones who are most broken become the ones who save us.